Hello, Will. Welcome to the Builder Mind podcast.
Hey man, I see.
Yeah, great to have you here today. Just like some hours ago, I saw your LinkedIn post or like someone else just about running today in the morning.
Yeah.
So like before getting to know you first, I would love to kind of ask a question about that. Is that what do you usually think of while you're running?
Yeah, I put that post up actually. We're part of something called the Balderton Launch Program. Balderton Capital are a big multi-stage VC based out of here in King's Cross, and there's probably 10 or so companies that they accept into their launch program every 6 months. And a few of us are runners, and it's such great weather in London at the moment. We just went out for a run, tried to clear our heads. So we were just chatting about everything that early stage, founders talk about: fundraising, early hires, trying to find product market fit, all this kind of stuff.
And kind of, do you see like some of your peers are doing better than you, or kind of hustling in this early stage journey of building something really exciting?
Yeah, it's super interesting because all the companies obviously didn't start at the same time. We're probably the newest company, I would say. So we founded in February of this year. Most companies are at least probably 6 months older than us. Some are, probably 18 months old or so now. But all the problems that early stage companies face seem to be quite similar. And to be honest, even the problems that non-early stage companies face, I've worked in Series B, C companies, and the problems still seem to be somewhat the same. I'm sure they probably feel more acute right now because there are still so many unsolved challenges. But the problems, whether it's us or a company that's been going 18 months or so, still seem quite similar.
Interesting. Great, man. So now like better to know you more, and then also kind of what you do. So it will be nice to let us know kind of like what brought you to the world of startups, and kind of, why did you jump in this crazy journey of building a startup or startups in general?
Yeah, so I think there's probably like a long term and a short term reason. The long term one first is my dad's an entrepreneur. Actually, I'm wearing his T-shirt from a company that's probably like 20. It's probably 20 years old or something. But he's always been an entrepreneur my entire life. So I have never really experienced a childhood where my dad wasn't going to work for his own company. So from a very early age, it was always something I wanted to do. It's funny. I live in a family of five, two sisters. One's a freelancer, the other one's actually an influencer, and my mum's doing some stuff in the garden design world as well. And my dad's obviously an entrepreneur. So all five of us, to some extent, are kind of like carving our own path in a non-conventional career sense. So that's kind of like the long-term reason. It was always something in my psyche, I suppose. And the short-term reason is I've worked for a fair few different kind of AI companies over the last few years. I've run a great AI community here in London with three other fantastic organizers. And I was growing an Instagram account with my sister. And there was all these kind of things came together in the last year or so, I'd say. The new technology we have available to us with these incredible frontier LLMs, and the world and kind of influencer marketing was changing. And it felt just like the right time to jump. And there's a big problem to be solved. So that was the short-term reason.
Amazing. And kind of, so like, was it you coming with the idea, and then like now you have a co-founder? Yeah, just like building it.
Yeah. So my co-founder Sagan, we met on Instagram probably a year ago now, maybe a bit less, maybe 10 months, which is probably there's something to be said about two founders who start a company in the influencer space, in the creator economy, who meet on Instagram. Maybe it was just meant to be. But yes, he was working in the recruitment space where he was building an AI agent for recruiters, and is now, I've seen so many of these companies on LinkedIn over the last few weeks trying to replace what recruiters do. But he was doing that. I was working with my sister at the time, building this Instagram account with her. I was also working at a company called Oncord, it's kind of in the AI data infrastructure space. Yeah, the first product we actually built was a product for influencers themselves to reply to their fans. So my sister was getting loads of DMs. She's an interior designer. She was getting loads of DMs from her kind of her audience, I suppose, asking her about, what color sofa should I get? What color should I paint my wall? And there's just lots of questions. And we thought, with my AI in mind, I was like, wow, she's got hundreds of hours of content recorded on her Instagram or on YouTube or whatever. Like, she's answered these questions over the last year or so. We don't need to come up with a kind of like net new response every time. My co-founder, we built a RAG application that answered the questions for her. It turns out it's actually not a great place to sell is to creators. There's this long tail of creators, like most of them don't have any money. There's like the top 1% of creators have a lot of money, and then most of them don't. So unless you're driving revenue for them, it's not a great product. So then we pivoted to actually sell to brands, which is what we're doing now.
Okay, great. But also kind of like I have seen kind of like the rise of this, AI or kind of like digital twin of creators, where they are kind of doing calls or video
Yeah,
calls
yeah.
and chatting. So there's like huge kind of, I still think that, yeah, like they're like some of them are doing, but yeah, like there's only one like small portion of creators who can afford this type of
Exactly,
technology because
exactly. Yeah.
it's like costly, in the end to have
It's
it.
costly, and to be honest, I think a company will be built there. I don't know if we were the best people to do it. I've spoken with the team at the Sidemen. I don't know if there's a
Mhm.
YouTube collective here in the UK, and they're potentially interested in trying to replicate, I suppose, their very large creators. Because if KSI can only do one brand shoot a week, the amount of money he can make is very much limited by his own time. Whereas if you can essentially replicate him with some kind of AI video, then you can open yourself up to many more opportunities. So yeah, for that like 1%, there's certainly a lot of opportunities there. And the long tail, to be honest, I think that will probably be solved by the big platforms. I know Meta are spending a lot of time investing in replicating creators. So it's a problem that they're probably best placed to solve. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
Yeah, true, true. So, like, maybe you can give us a quick pitch of Tano or kind of like Charlie that you called the agent and kind of what it is, who it is for, and also like what are the key value propositions that you're kind of pushing for that.
Yeah, so at Tano, we're building an AI agent for influencer marketing teams to automate their entire pipeline of work. Essentially, our kind of like key ICP users are Shopify stores who are using influencers on mass. So one of the key workflows we do is influencer gifting. When a D2C store will gift hundreds or maybe even thousands of influencers their new product, we have an agent that automates all of that. So it automates finding the right creators, which is a very difficult problem to solve, and then outreaching them, kind of negotiating, going back and forth, fulfilling the product, actually sending it to them, following up with them, making sure that once they receive the product, they actually do a post about it, and then all the reporting. And we're working with some very exciting companies like Skin and Me and Wild. We're also working with some software companies like Lovable and Bolt as well.
Great, great. And so kind of it's more of like this marketing agent which does the kind of the work for the onboarding and kind of dealing with the influencers. So like you guys are not in the ads or some other part of the marketing vertical.
That's exactly it. Influencer marketing is very interesting because it's a uniquely positioned marketing channel where, unlike other channels where you can scale it, where your opportunity to scale isn't proportional just to the amount of work you put in. For example, with if you're using Instagram ads or TikTok ads or whatever, if you are currently doing $100,000 a month in ad spend and you want to scale that to $1 million a month in ad spend, the amount of time it takes to scale that doesn't go 10x, maybe goes 2x or something. Whereas with influencers, if you're working with 5 influencers a month and you want to scale that to 10 influencers a month, your work really does go up 2x. So it means, and what that results in is just like there's a huge amount of manual work that needs to be done. You've got to outreach these people, contracts, payments, gifting. We're focusing right now on the gifting component, but there's just so much manual work to be done, and that's exactly what we do. And what this the advent of these incredible LLMs has enabled us to actually go and do the work for companies. You have all these software companies before, these SaaS platforms, and what they really enable you to do is they're essentially just productivity tools, right? You have all your data, you find influencers, but then you have to hire someone to actually go and do the work. Somebody's got to do the work at the end of the day, or you hire an agency. And what we're really doing is providing a third door. You don't have to go to an agency anymore. You don't have to hire a ton of internal staff. You just hire Charlie, who's essentially an AI employee who just does the work for you.
Yeah, like while I was like preparing for this episode, I was like thinking, what do we mean by influencers? So how do you define, an influencer? Like,
there's probably 2 ways of thinking about it. One is if you just want to quantify it. Maybe an influencer is someone who consistently gets good engagement and is in a particular niche and serves that niche. But I'm not sure that is the right way to look at it. And this is a problem that we have as we're trying to build a technology solution on top of these platforms is an influencer, and you have to pardon the very obvious definition, but is an influencer is someone who genuinely influences other people. And just being a content creator doesn't make you an influencer. I myself, I've got whatever it is, 12,000 followers on TikTok. I am not an influencer. I don't influence anyone's buying decisions. Whereas there's a bunch of people who might have 12,000 followers in a particular niche who really do influence people's buying decisions. And that's what D2C brands have to work out. Are you partnering with people who are actually going to drive sales for you? And it's really hard, and it's really, really hard to determine because you can't just do it by the numbers in a lot of cases. It's more about kind of like feel and does this person resonate with the brand? Does their audience resonate with the brand? So yeah, it can be quite complicated.
And do you have like kind of like somehow have a method where you can kind of like identify whether this is an influencer who could kind of derive the sales or kind of like be the representative of a brand?
Yeah, we do. So we break this down into like really two stages. The first one is sourcing. Sort of, I think the stats that seem to be kind of accepted now is that there's about 200 million content creators / influencers, depending on whose definition you're using.
Including two of us.
Yeah, exactly, including both of us. 200 million influencers in the world. So for any brand at any one point, when you're starting off a campaign, that's essentially your top of funnel. You have to go down from 200 million to maybe 100 you want to work with, or 50 you want to work with, or 10 you want to work with. But that is really difficult to do, right? That's an enormous data set. So what we do is this sourcing step where we get from 200 million maybe down to the 5,000 who are accurate. And then there's this vetting stage where we do much deeper analysis on individual influencers. So here we're using multimodal models to go and actually watch the influencers' content, reading the comments. What are the comment sections say? Are they driving a lot of value for their audience? Are people very engaged? And then there's this kind of like quantifiable method where you're saying, okay, this post got 150,000 views, it had a high impression rate, and it had a really high engagement rate as well. And then you're also looking at the comments, like, are people genuinely resonating with this? Is this something that they're interested in? Would the brand have a good alignment here? The way we think about it is you have your campaign or the brand, and you have your creator in a kind of Venn diagram, and you're trying to match them, right? And if the intersection between the two is big enough, then they're probably a good fit for your campaign.
But also kind of, I think that maybe this is also kind of like something, kind of reverse engineering for creators if they want to become an influencer, kind of to rethink like your approach, kind of how to like resonate with the brands.
Yeah,
and
100%.
do things which is like more kind of, that like your algorithm or like your machine can like pick them up, So because I know like so many people are just like creating content, but without any purpose or like without having a thought, how this could actually, be useful.
Yeah. I think there's two ways you can look at that. One is like, yes, if you're a brand, of course, there are essentially criteria that you're looking for. And if a creator has those set of criteria, then your likelihood of working with them increases. But then on the other side, something that's really important to brands is authenticity. And if as a creator, you're just creating content purely for trying to get that brand in, there's a high likelihood that you're going to end up losing that authenticity. And by doing that, the kind of like second order effect is you're going to lose this audience you have, and then you do lose your influence, which is really what brands are working with you for. So you have to be careful.
Yeah, like there should be some kind of like some like thoughtful processes. So it shouldn't be
Exactly.
kind of pure on that. Yeah.
Exactly.
But maybe I think it's the best time to really kind of look at the product, just like to the like
of course. Yeah. So this is just a demo account we've set up. So the way we work with brands is probably quite different to how most people are used to interacting with software. Usually when you buy software, you get given a license, a yearly license to an account, and then you can log into the software and go and use it. We want to actually abstract the work one layer deeper, or kind of like further up the chain, I suppose. We don't want our customers to have to do any work that they would usually log into the software to do. So what we're actually doing here is just getting the agent to do that work. So this really is a representation of what the agent is doing. And you can think of each of these columns as one like step in the workflow of what we're trying to achieve. At the beginning, we have essentially a campaign objective. We want to work with 100 influencers in the UK who are between the ages of 25 and 35 and blah, 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 whatever niche they're, footballers or whatever. And then the end result is exactly that. But then there's all this work to do to get there. So firstly, you've got to source them. So we have a whole load of like data partners around the world where we go and find this data from. And when I say data, what we really mean is influencers. And we do this vetting stage that I was just talking to you about. Is this intersection big enough? If we're saying like, yes, the intersection is big enough, then we go to the outreach step where we actually send them an email. So you can see all the emails here.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll get an email saying, this brand wants to work with you. Here's the deliverables, here's the timelines, et cetera. And then we do this negotiation step. And here's where it differs from brand to brand. If we're doing a gifting campaign, like we're doing for Wild and Skin in Me, it's essentially a binary offer. Either you join the gifting campaign and you become an ambassador, and potentially there's an affiliate deal to be done there as well, or you don't. There's no payments involved except from the affiliate side, but either you take it or you don't. It's binary. Whereas if you're doing a paid campaign, which we do for some customers, then it becomes a bit more nuanced. How much is this influencer worth? What deliverables do we expect? Do we need usage rights? Do they want paid ad rights? All this kind of stuff, timelines. So it becomes quite nuanced there. And then if we're happy, then we move to the next step, which for a gifting campaign would be actually sending the products. We integrate through Shopify, so we automatically just send the products out to them. We then track where the products have been sent, and then once they arrive, we send the influencer an email saying, we see that your gift has arrived. We go if you can create some content, etc. And then this process continues, but many hundreds of times for each campaign.
Okay, great. So kind of like you know like what kind of like campaign you want to launch, and like you find the influencers, but also do you also measure the success of it afterwards, or?
Yeah, exactly. So one thing we're doing is we're constantly monitoring all the influencers. So when someone finally publishes, whether that's an Instagram story or a reel or TikTok, we're immediately notified, and we can send either us like a Slack message, or we can send our customers an email saying this influencer's gone live. Then yeah, to your point, we aggregate all that data, and then we review it every few days to make sure we're sponsoring the right creators and brands are actually getting a return from their ad spend.
Okay, perfect. And it's all kind of like Charlie doing it without any human intervention.
It's an interesting question. It's like at what point is it important to bring a human back into the loop? And I think to some extent it's an unanswered question. My belief is there are points where it's really important that humans actually have some kind of control. For example, in this content approve stage, you can see here, maybe it's really important that someone, a human at the brand, is actually having a look at the content and saying, not only, saying yes or no, but also they know the brand inside and out. They've probably seen hundreds of creators. They know what kind of content resonates with the audience. And maybe that's a really good point for them to step in and say, like, yeah, yes, we think this is good, but here's maybe some revisions, or here's what we think could resonate with the audience more strongly.
It's kind of like my question was like, what was missing, in this market that kind of like Tano is becoming the solution for it. So weren't there some already existing solutions like tackling this issue, or what exactly was missing?
So yeah, there are about 20,000 companies who already solved this exact problem. They're called influencer marketing agencies. And as I say, there are 20,000 of them. They solve this, and this is what they do. The issue with them is they're a massive black box. You give your budget to an agency, who knows where the spend goes. I've heard horror stories of brands giving them, around $100,000. Firstly, they'll take 30,000 of it as their fee, and then maybe they'll spend 20K on influencers, and then they're going to spend the remaining 50% just on ads to artificially boost the rates and artificially boost the viewing figures from those influencers, so it looks like they're doing phenomenally well, but they're not. So they're not getting that. They could have just spent that money on ads in the first place. There's a reason they wanted to go to influencers. It's a different kind of it's a different strategy. So that's one thing. They're this complete black box, and yeah, they charge a huge amount. So with us, we're not really competing with the existing software solutions. There are companies like Grin or Upfluence or Creator IQ, all kind of quite large software companies themselves who all do this. But to my point at the beginning, someone still had to log in, do the work, and yeah, really you can like complete that task. Whereas we're building an agent to be a direct replacement for whoever or whatever is currently doing the work, and that is agencies. So that's really our competition, is the $20 billion that's spent a year on influence marketing agencies.
Yeah, and because you're selling this solution to brands, but you really kind of need to still convince the creators or influencers just to kind of, accept this offer, or kind of like how, kind of the demands, the supply side works, in terms of like influencers.
Yeah.
And like, do you keep the database of the ones which already work with you guys, so you kind of know who they are, and then kind of they would receive the first offer in case something happens, or what?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, firstly, yeah, we have a bunch of data from all over the place now, which gives us really good insight when we're running new campaigns as to where to target and rates and all this kind of stuff. But in terms of convincing the influencers, it was an unanswered question at the beginning. How would influencers react to being like conversing and having a relationship with AI? And I was my co-founder was incredibly bullish on it. I was not uneasy, but I just didn't know how it was going to go. And our findings are like very conclusive. The influencers love speaking to an AI for really two key reasons. Number one is we can spend the time and give them full transparency as to why we're offering them a certain thing. We can spend hours answering questions on specific questions. So for example, when we're working with brands like Wild Skinemy, when someone has a question about the type of ingredient in their product or something really niche that someone would probably have to go and spend for 10-15 minutes answering email, we can answer it like that and give them a conclusive and like a full answer. And the second one is speed. Essentially, this is a oftentimes a business transaction. Creators a key income stream at the end of the day is often brand deals. So they want clarity and they want transparency as to what's going on. And we can provide the speed really quickly to know, for them to know whether this is a deal that's worth doing or not.
Just like out of curiosity, a question came to just like now is that, but are you also kind of gonna go towards like fintech, like kind of more payment, because also like transaction happens through you. So are you also kind of gonna take care of the transaction or how?
For now, we're just focusing on influencer gifting and affiliate programs with D2C brands. But for sure, like if I look as a founder, like where's most of the money in this industry? It's in payments, right? It's in proper brand deals. But we just need to take it kind of like step by step and kind of walk before we can run. Will we end up becoming a fintech? I hope not. I think we can utilize, there's been billions of dollars invested in some fantastic fintechs. We can probably just be the customer of rather than trying to build an entire payment solution, to be honest.
Great, thank you. Just like moving towards more sales and marketing talk, I would love to know kind of how you're selling your kind of solution to the brands. Let's just take, like you mentioned, Lovable, Bolt, and all this cool softwares or other ones. So like, what's kind of the key sales methods to kind of reach out to them and then get them to use them?
Well, what's interesting for us is, and this has only been enabled by building an agent that actually does the work, is we can essentially offer this as a service. We're not trying to sell them a new piece of software that they probably won't use or don't need. We are offering just a service to a problem that they're trying to solve. So for us, that means we go to them, they give us a budget or they tell us they want to do for the D2C brand, the kind of CPG brands, they actually are using physical goods. So we actually are sending products. With the software ones, it's slightly different. It's more payments based. But yeah, we just go and offer them a service, which is a much easier sell because you're not having to try and convince them that the software is incredible and it's going to fix all their problems. They're not in the market for software for this. They're in the market for actually someone doing the work. If it wasn't us, it would probably be an agency. But just with us, it's a lot cheaper and a lot faster.
And do you kind of already know that they're into kind of, like working with influencers, or like do you also go to some of them and pitch this idea that, hey, for example, like Lovable, hey, you guys could, use this influencer marketing just with us if you have never tried, or how does it work?
Yeah, great question. I think a bit of both. With the CPG brands, like they all use influencers already. It's already a cool marketing channel for them. But with the software ones, yeah, it's certainly, I think sometimes a bit of a novel approach. If you look at a company like Lovable, they've grown extraordinarily well, basically through word of mouth. So for them, it's just like, how do we pour fuel on this already, massive fire? And if they look at where most of their users hear about their solution, it's on Twitter, it's on TikTok, it's on Instagram, it's on YouTube. So they were like, okay, how can we now actually generate more, how can we generate more word of mouth, slightly artificially, through influencers? But yeah, I guess for them, it's probably more about selling the idea of influence marketing and the fact that we can do it. Whereas with CPG brands, it's more the fact that they know it works for them. Now, can we actually optimize it?
Great. And just to kind of like you were mentioning that you're offering this more as a service. So like what's what's your take? So like, for example, is it kind of success fee that like you guys are charging, or is it like
we charge for outputs. Yeah, we try and align our pricing as much as possible on outputs. So for example, we charge for when we're working with CPG brands, we just charge per influencer that we partner with. So our fee is completely tied to the hopeful kind of success of the campaign.
Okay, great. And kind of, is there some kind of like platforms which you guys are, like focusing a lot on kind of like marketing or positioning Charlie, just to kind of get, influencers or like brands?
Yeah, this is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. We've been lucky so far in the fact that I've done quite a lot of kind of growing in public. Me and my co-founder, as I say, I've got a TikTok channel. My co-founder's got a YouTube channel, and through speaking on there is really how we've found our initial customers. But I guess one of the issues with being an early stage founder is you get a lot of signal from a lot of places, and it's hard to determine which is the right road to actually go down, because all of them from the outside seem like they could work.
Shiny ones, all of them.
Exactly. There's shiny object syndrome like the entire time. And it's very difficult because you have to slightly cannibalize these other product streams and these other like service channels to focus on just one. So that's the position where we're in right now. We're doing all these things for all these amazing companies. But I know to build a really scalable company, we probably have to just focus on one problem and do that really well. But that means we have to get rid of the other few. But to answer your question about channels we're growing on, LinkedIn's been big for us. We got a couple of early customers on Twitter. I actually think our first customer came from Reddit, which is I think where a lot of early stage founders go just to try and find someone to speak to about their about their product. But yeah, I think long term, I think LinkedIn for us will probably be especially if we want to move into the, I don't want to call them like enterprises because I think that word gets chucked around a lot in the SaaS space, but larger, kind of more like professional, bigger companies, they're probably going to be on LinkedIn. I think that's where our users will be.
Yeah, and kind of, are you in the stage or kind of, are you like getting closer to the point where you have to focus in one niche, kind of like one problem, or kind of like you guys are just like, like trying to see what's more shinier and then like what kind of actually is like bringing more value or what? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we probably will have to, and I think we've made the decision that we're going to focus on just on influencer gifting, and then we'll vertically integrate across the rest of the stack over time. Notably, we'll start automating payment, actual paid campaigns for companies as well. But for us, we have a product right now that's working very well in the influencer gifting space. So I think we just need to double down on that.
And do you have some kind of, estimation in your mind as a founder that like how big this will go? For example, in 2-3 years, like what's the ARR or like just kind of like some kind of like numbers out of your mind, which could just seems that okay, we are like we're doing something right, or like we're on the good path at least.
Yeah, you sound like these investor calls I'm in with VCs now. Yeah, what is the 5-year plan? How do we get to $100 billion? I think this is the same for a lot of agentic companies and not just us. If we can prove that our agent is capable of doing the work that traditionally humans have done, like the market for us is enormous. As I say, there's 20,000 of these agencies who are all doing the work, and billions of dollars a year are spent just on staffing costs for them alone. Or if we look at internal staffing costs for people who are working within brands and just you're going to staff costs of them, I think it's around $10 billion. I think it's a bad way to analyze how big your company can be is just like a top down, we'll take 1%. I don't think that's particularly fruitful because any company can say they'll take 1% of the market and basically none ever do. If we look at the kind of like the bottom up approach, if an influencer marketer is getting paid, 30, 40, 50 grand a year, and we can augment them, I really don't like this whole like replacement theory where we think we're going to come take everyone's jobs. We just want to make the ones who are there already considerably more productive and augment them with that technology. Then I don't think we need thousands of customers to get to like $100 million ARR.
Okay, great. Because kind of like my question was coming from that, like how much do you need to spend, on Agent Charlie just, to get better? Is it kind of, a bit of hardcore technology, just kind of to make it actually like fine tuning it a lot to work much better than, just a chat GPT or kind of like simple AI, or kind of, like how that would work actually?
As a more of a technical question as to what we actually have to do to make this agent performant, it's a great question. I think you probably can get a reasonably long way by doing like simple things well. But then that last mile of performance, where the difference is really made, I think is very, very difficult to do. So, for example, if we think about influencer negotiations, the number of micro decisions that are being made as to what an influencer deserves in terms of cost, there's probably like thousands of micro decisions made, and trying to just get a ChatGPT to do that is never going to work. And we tried at the beginning when we were like, MVP 0.01 at the beginning, we were like, hey, let's just build like a super simple workflow and we'll just plug, GPT-4o in and see what happens. And the results are rubbish. It tries to negotiate. It's read one negotiation book, and it's got one piece of negotiation book in its training data, and it pumps that out, and it's useless. So actually trying to get that last mile performance is really difficult. But we're not trying to build a frontier model here for influencer marketing. I think that would be a fool's game, and we probably would have had to raise, a few hundred extra $1 million. What we're doing is we want to build a system where whatever the frontier model is, whether that's Gemini or OpenAI or Claude or whatever it is, we then plug that into us. So at any given point, we're right at the forefront of what these LLMs are capable of.
Perfect. Also, I noticed that like you guys have raised from Seedcamp, so it would be nice if you can kind of like comment how was the fundraising experience, and also if you got to like Balderton program. So like how all this works and like how they can support you actually on this growth.
Yeah, Balderton have been really great to us. It's a fantastic program. I'd recommend it to any founders. There's no cash, no equity. For all intents and purposes, it's a co-working space. But for us, it's a really fantastic environment of loads of other early stage founders, some like really, really phenomenal people here. People building kind of recruitment platforms, execs from Facebook, people who have raised, 20, $30 million, people in the preventative health space, people building, all sorts of things. So that's been really great to us. Great for us. That's probably been the biggest change for us since we started the company. It's just being in an environment with a bunch of early stage founders, all, most of whom are going through fundraising, going through, let's go back to the beginning of our conversation. The problems are pretty similar for most companies. We're all, making pivots every other day, like slight pivots as to, who our new customers are or the product we want to build. So that's been really great. And yeah, the investment process, we were lucky, I suppose, in a way that when we started the company, we got some really great customers very early on. Lovable, we landed in the first month of founding the company. So getting logos like that were really helpful in the fundraising process.
Great. Just kind of because I see lots of founders that they're moving to the US, and like you're based in UK, London. So kind of, do you see London as the forever base for you, or like are you?
I think so. I think there's a lot of mimetic desire with people who want to move to San Francisco. I think we're incredibly lucky I'm incredibly lucky to have grown up and have the opportunity to start a company in one of perhaps even the most internationalized city in the world. There are incredible investment opportunities here. There's phenomenal companies, 11 Labs, Synthesia, my old company, Encore, who are doing some really interesting things. On Feeder, who I used to work at. There's amazing companies here that, it's not just some stroke of luck that OpenAI and Scale AI have all opened offices in London, Google, Apple, DeepMind's just down the road from us here in King's Cross. I think if I was building a dev tools company and I was selling to other developers, then I think there's a real strategic advantage to being in San Francisco. But if I look up, we've been running the company, 3-4 months now. We have customers in the US, Kazakhstan, Sweden, a couple here in London, 3 here in London actually. By being in San Francisco, I honestly do not see the advantage. Fundraising for us was a relatively smooth process, if I'm being entirely honest. I don't know if future rounds will be so smooth. They'll probably be much harder. But yeah, I don't see the point unless you're building a dev tools company or you like nice weather, which I do. So maybe that'll be a good reason one day.
Yeah. And how big is the team now? Because I also see that you're hiring and you're not kind of happy with the results from agencies more applying.
Yeah. I put a job post out for a founding engineer, which we're still looking for, by the way. If anyone's listening to this and thinks I'd be a good fit, please reach out. And I just got literally hundreds of messages from recruiters who, I'm sorry, I haven't replied to anyone, so apologies for that. But I've been in sales, so I know what it's like. But yeah, we have this vision to build a very small, lean team, highly specialized. And I don't really want, and I know my co-founder doesn't, we don't want to run a company with hundreds of employees. I just don't really think there's a need for that with the technology we have available to us now. We want to build a really big, really valuable company. I look at, actually some of our customers, I look at Lovable and Bolt and I see what they've done with relatively small teams, and it's really amazing. And I think for us, also from a philosophical perspective, we're building a verticalized agent to solve one small but kind of deep problem for a lot of brands. There's so many other verticalized agents being built. It's in the accountancy space and the whatever it is, and other bits of the marketing stack or sales. And over time, they're going to get better and better. So I don't see why we can't build a team of agents rather than building a team of people.
And when you were saying lean, so how many is lean for you? 5 people or just 2 co-founders or 10 people?
I mean, it's really hard to put a number on. There's a company called Arcades out in Paris who we've actually done some work with. They are a team of 5 people, I believe, and they're doing 5 million ARR. Of course, they're not a massive company, but I know Remain's objective is to get to $100 million with less than 10 people. And I think we're probably.
Yeah. And just for your own kind of, use of AI, do you kind of, pay for services which offer the things that you need as an agent, or are you kind of thinking of building things yourself, just your simple agents?
I think both. We use N8N a lot for our own workflows. I also, of course, the staple ones, I pay for ChatGPT, I pay for Granola. I literally couldn't live without Granola. I pay for Lovable, I pay for Bolt, of course. But other than that, I think there'll be, this kind of build versus, I was having a good conversation with my co-founder yesterday about this build versus buy, and we're thinking maybe the balance now shifts to building a lot more because it's easier to build stuff, right? But equally, you could say the same about our own company. Why don't Wild build their own agent to doing what we're doing? And I think there is certainly a case to be made that if you'll have deep expertise in one industry or one problem, it's actually much better just to buy that and then try and spend the time building the incorrect thing. So like easy automations, easy agents to build in house. But yeah, hopefully in a year's time, if we talk again, we'll have a team of 25 agents doing all the stuff that we would have needed employees to do.
Great. We talked of like Lovable and like Bolt a lot, this like no-code solution. So I would love to take like your opinion on kind of how useful they are. Like, can you really make a working MVP with them, or is it more kind of just like a landing page, nice thing just to
Yes,
have?
you absolutely can. I'll give you an example. I won't name him because he's part of the Builders and Launch program here, but there's someone here who's closed 3 big 5-figure deals with very large enterprises, all of a Lovable app. And he's, I won't say who it is because it might give it away to his potential customers, but I don't know what more proof you need than hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's true. Yeah. Because kind of like I'm using like Lovable, and for sure, for some cases it really works, And for me, I just like want to like build a marketplace, which like does it well. So it already has a database, integrated. So it's really cool. Like, so I think that like there are like lots of cases that you can just build, but also for some cases it's like more of like landing page. But really,
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I guess they would probably admit this as well, maybe not, but this is still like very early days of technology. Can you build a full SaaS that is fully performant with no security issues? It's like got all the core infra set up with the servers and all this stuff. Like, probably, can you do that on Lovable about today? Probably not. But for most situations where you just want to spin something up, then I think it's fantastic. But I think if I take a step back in this, thinking about how we're looking at agents, Saga and I have had quite a few funny conversations about this, because at the beginning, when we were doing a lot of outreach, just trying to find some early customers, Saga hadn't done really much outreach in his career before. And he spent, a few weeks messaging hundreds of people on LinkedIn and was like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe this is actually someone's job. And then his advice was obviously, why don't we buy 11x, or why don't we buy Artisan or one of these SDR agents? I was like, well, there's a lot of nuance to these things. It's a bit harder than just like spamming 1,000 people. And then once we got a couple of customers, obviously I wanted the product to move forward a bit faster. I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. So why don't we just use Lovable, or why don't we just use Bolt? And then he said exactly the same thing back to me. It's like, there's actually more complications that you can't just spin it up immediately. So maybe there's a day where he replaces me with Artisan or 11x and I replace him with Lovable or Bolt. And maybe it's a company run by no one, but we'll see.
That's great. Like, we're arriving to the last part, which I just like ask, like random questions, and I would love to hear your answer. So my first question is that, what part of influencer marketing should never be automated, or like what should be fully automated in this?
I think there's a really strong argument to be made that you should never automate parts of community building. And I think in real life connections are going to become more and more important over the next few years as we're all inundated with generated media. So obviously in-person events you can't automate, but there's a sense that if you really want ambassadors and influencers to buy into your brand, they probably want some kind of human connection there. And that's my belief is, and the job of us is, how do we automate all the boring stuff so then you as an influencer marketer or as a community manager can spend your time interfacing in a much more authentic way, and where you have way more time with your influencers than before, when you had to spend half your day drawing out contracts or managing payments or outreaching people. So we're trying to reduce the amount of time spent on like boring, tedious, cumbersome tasks, and increase the amount of time spent on things that truly move the needle. And I guess that probably answers both your questions about what we need to automate and what we need to keep kind of more manual, I suppose.
Perfect. And what's something you have unlearned since becoming a founder?
Unlearned. I put a post out on LinkedIn the day, you might have seen it, about that everyone's job is basically a salesperson. And I think there's this and I strongly believe that. There's this, I think there maybe there's this like slightly hubristic belief that when you become a founder, you're going to be making all these like big strategic decisions, and you'll be sitting in board meetings and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, it couldn't be further from the truth. Day to day, what are you actually doing? And I look around at what everyone's doing here. You're sending cold messages on LinkedIn. You're trying to do some, user interviews and trying to really understand how people use your product and what's important. You're making LinkedIn posts. So finally, one of your ICP customers interacts with you and gets to know you. And everything, when it comes down to it, if I attracted one to be there, everything is just sales. Or trying to sell to your customers. I was trying to sell to my co-founder that we need to build this new feature. I was trying to sell to our investors that they should give us money. I'm trying to sell to our potential hires that they should join the company. So that is something I've probably unlearned, is that, everything is now just sales. And the quicker you probably realize that, the better.
True. I was talking with a great founder, and like what he was saying to me is that like what he learned was kind of rethinking skill, because like you have some beliefs and you kind of strongly believe in them, but then once you become a founder, you see that, you have to like rethink some stuff that you strongly believe, and now it just like doesn't work. You see the data, you see like things are not working, so you really have to give yourself this rethinking skill, just to kind of
Yeah,
think
that's a
about
good
different
point.
things like from a different perspective, and take a kind of this like just like risking and taking a chance on like contrarian beliefs or kind of approaches.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, every week, I'm sure every founder goes through it. On a Monday, you'll think that a particular product feature is going to be the bedrock of this company build, and by Friday, you've pivoted, and it's now a completely different ICP with a new feature. And yeah, you've got to have the mental agility, I suppose, to consistently be ready to figure out what's next.
Yep. What is one thing Charlie has taught you about humans? Because like what you're trying to do is
It's
that,
a really good question. It's a really good question. Yeah.
like you're like building an agent, which behaves or does like human things. So, and what you're kind of learning more about humans, by trying to make the agent more human.
Yeah, I have an observation. I don't know if it's at the point of a learning yet, but it's an observation I've made time and time again, and I haven't built the right mental model to how to think about this. I don't know, you might have some thoughts. I think in a few years, we're all going to interact probably potentially even more with some kind of artificial being than we are with other humans. Here's a great example. Last night I was sitting on the tube and I was sitting next to a guy who was writing something on ChatGPT, and it's quite hard not to look over someone's shoulder when his phone was in my face, and he was writing an essay about how he wanted to break up with his girlfriend. It was almost like a reality show I was sitting on, and I was like, wow, that 5 years ago this would have been ridiculous. You're never going to type in, I mean, it was literally hundreds of words he was typing into Google about how he's going to break up with his girlfriend. And then if I relate that to things that are happening with Charlie, we've quite often got responses from influencers saying, I'm so sorry for taking so long to reply to you. Like, something awful has happened. And I read one about a week ago saying, I'm so sorry for taking so long to you. We've had, like, my father died. And I read it going, oh my God, like, I hope Charlie hasn't said anything, like, that was improper. And Charlie wrote the most fantastic response that was like, I'm so sorry, like, take all the time you need. Half of me felt a little bit uncomfortable. I was like, I'm sure maybe it should have been a human replying to that. But then the influencer replied back to it saying, thank you so much for taking the time. Like, it really means a lot to me. And again, I don't know if I'm at a point of a learning here, but the observation is everyone is interacting so much more with artificial personas or whatever you want to call it than we used to. And that acceleration has happened so fast, and I think it's going to only continue to accelerate. You only have to look at the growth of character.ai. I think the average use time or something was 4 hours a day. It was like more than Facebook or whatever in their early days, where their use was just extraordinary. So that's, as I say, not sure it's a learning, but just something I've seen is how quickly the world is changing and how quickly our interactions with technology is shifting.
Yeah, because I was talking with another like founder the other day, and like I was asking him, like he was like building something with mental health and kind of pushing people, and I was like, hey, like technology is making people feel like lonely, and why you're focusing on like building a technology just to solve this. And like what he said is that like he said, well, like I mean, we all live with technology, so it's part of us, and the only way that you can solve this is just also by technology. Kind of like this like humans to agent like interaction, and then this increasing, not declining, is actually like how, like what you're saying, so that's like how it's kind of becomes even more, because we are surrounded, and the easy way is like actually just like to use this in a good way, and maybe agents are kind of like how the solution might be.
100%. It's such an interesting conversation, because if we look back at technology, there's this like continuum. At the very beginning of time, the frontier of technology we had was like a sharpened stick or a rock, and then eventually fire. And our interaction with technology over the last few thousand years, the way in which it's integrated into our lives has become like a core part of infrastructure to everything we do. And the way in which we immerse ourselves in technology, especially since the advent of the PC or the smartphone, now everyone's spending most of the time looking at a phone, but it feels somewhat one way. Like, we are consuming something coming from that device, but now it feels like we've almost switched it, and it's now two-way. We are now giving a bunch more information, and we're like conversing with it in a much more real, human-like fashion. And then you have things like the metaverse, and whether that takes off, who knows? But VR and that continuum is just it seems obvious that it's going to keep rolling, and our immersion's only going to grow.
Yep. My last question is that when you're with your friends and except talking about technology, business, what are the other topics that you talk with your friends about, and just like to have a chill chat?
Formula One. I talk about F1 a lot. Sagar and I were joking the other day that it's going to be a requirement for anyone who joins Tano to be a huge F1 fan. We've got one Lewis Hamilton fan and me, and one Max Verstappen fan.
I was like once in Formula One in Azerbaijan, so and it's like really fun.
It's cool. It's cool. I do think engineers generally quite like it because it's so technical. Honestly, I feel like a lot of my people I speak to a lot these days are other founders, and we just speak about building companies and technology. It's what I've always been interested in technology. So I don't know if I have a good answer for you there because it's been the same for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the same thing, kind of with the founders. Like whenever we go somewhere, it's all the time like technology, and it's not like technology is about something, which will come to the technology in the end.
Yeah, exactly. It's all connected.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Will. It was super fun doing this, and
pleasure.
I'll see you in person sometime soon.
100%. Well, thanks for having me on, and great conversation.
Thank you so much, man. Sure.
Bye. Bye.